Good evening and welcome to Capitol Report on NTD Television. Here's what's coming up. President Trump signing into law the Laken Riley Act and announcing a move to keep criminal illegal immigrants at Guantanamo Bay. More on his actions and executive orders. RFK Jr. was in the hot seat in front of the Senate committee as President Trump's nominee for Secretary of Health and Human Services on day one of his confirmation hearing. The Trump administration is ending the protected status of over 500,000 Venezuelans in the U.S. Arian Pazdar has the details on that and the process ICE has made on arrests since President Trump took office.
This is Capitol Report, live from our global headquarters in our nation's capital. Here's Steve Lance.
Good evening, I'm Jack Bradley in for Steve Lance tonight. President Trump signs into law the Laken Riley Act, the first legislation to get to his desk in his second term. Along with the legislative win, Trump also announces a new move to send illegal immigrants to Guantanamo Bay. Joining us now live is NTD's White House correspondent Iris Tao. Iris, good evening. Tell us a bit more about what the president's actions are today.
Good evening to you as well, Jack. On Wednesday, President Trump signed into law the Laken Riley Act, which will require federal officials to arrest, detain, and deport illegal immigrants who have been accused of crimes like theft, assault on police officers, and causing the death or serious injury to others. President Trump, during the signing ceremony, highlights the case of Laken Riley, a Georgia nursing student who was brutally killed by an illegal immigrant who was a gang member. Watch.
She was a light of warmth and kindness in every single room. With today's action, her name will also live forever in the laws of our country, and this is a very important law. This is something that has brought Democrats and Republicans together.
The act was passed with the support of not only Republicans, but also dozens of Democrats. The parents of Laken Riley were also at the signing ceremony. Her mom thanking President Trump.
He said he would secure our borders and that he would never forget about Laken. And he hasn't. He's a man of his word. Our hope moving forward is that her life saves lives.
During the ceremony, President Trump also announced a new order to send up to 30,000 illegal immigrants, or who he calls worst of the worst, to the Guantanamo Bay naval base in Cuba.
To detain the worst criminal illegal aliens threatening the American people. Some of them are so bad we don't even trust the countries to hold them.
Border Czar Tom Homan told us at the White House this afternoon.
Well, there's already a migrant center there. It's been there for decades. So we're just going to expand upon the existing migrant center.
Homan asked that those who should go there will likely be flown there.
I mean, quite a significant move there. And so what's the latest we're hearing from the White House about the funding freeze, and has it actually been lifted?
That's a great question. So a lot of debate over this still. The White House Office of Management and Budget today rescinded a memo that was sent out earlier this week to pause all federal grants and assistance funding. And meanwhile, the White House clarified to NTD earlier today that it does not mean that the spending freeze itself was rescinded. Instead, what's rescinded was only the memo. And that is still the case, that you're going to pause all federal grants and funding, especially targeting programs related to DEI, transgenderism, as well as what they call wasteful spending. Here's what President Trump talked about earlier today, giving an example. Watch.
We identified and stopped $50 million being sent to Gaza to buy condoms for Hamas. 50 million. And you know what's happened to them? They've used them as a method of making bombs.
And the White House also further said that the rescission of the memo is actually to help overcome the court order that's currently pausing the freeze from going into effect. Meanwhile, President Trump today also signed 4 executive orders, one to expand school choice, one to fight anti-Semitism on college campuses, another one, for example, to target federal funding for schools for K through 12 school to teach critical race theory and gender ideology, and another one to celebrate the 250th anniversary of the American independence. Back to you.
Well, Iris, we got a lot more executive orders to keep our eyes on. Thank you very much for that update. And President Trump's lawyers filed a notice of appeal today seeking to overturn his conviction in the New York business records case. The conviction made Trump the first person with a criminal record to win a presidential election. The jury found President guilty on 34 counts of falsifying business records. A notice of appeal starts the appeals process in New York. In the Trump classified documents case, pending charges against co-defendants Walt Nauta and Carlos de la Oliveira have been tossed. Prosecutors had appealed the district court's dismissal of the case. The Trump administration withdrew the appeal today, which formally ends the case. The Justice Department dropped the case against Trump shortly after he won the election. And RFK Jr. was in the hot seat in front of a Senate committee as President Trump's nominee for Secretary of Health and Human Services. On day one, Kennedy faced praise, criticism, and plenty of tough questions. NTD correspondent Jason Blair reports.
Robert F. Kennedy Jr. spent hours in front of the Senate Finance Committee Wednesday, making statements and answering questions on day one of his nomination hearings.
There is no single culprit in chronic disease. Much as I have criticized certain industries and agencies, President Trump and I understand that most of their scientists and experts genuinely care about American health. Therefore, we will bring together all stakeholders in pursuit of this unifying goal.
Kennedy is scheduled for 2 days of hearings, which will be followed by a full Senate vote on whether or not to confirm him as the Secretary of Health and Human Services. Many senators probed Kennedy about his stance on vaccines. Senator Ron Wyden alleged that Kennedy has embraced conspiracy theories, especially on the safety and efficacy of vaccines.
He has made it his life's work to sow doubt and discourage parents from getting their kids life-saving vaccines.
But Kennedy pushed back, saying that he's not anti-vaccine or anti-industry, but he is pro-safety.
I worked for years to raise awareness about the mercury and toxic chemicals in fish, and nobody called me anti-fish. And I believe that that vaccines play a critical role in healthcare. All of my kids are vaccinated.
Along with a fair share of challenging questions, the need for unity also came up. Senator Ron Johnson said that we need to heal and unify as a nation.
I'm not necessarily the most optimistic guy because we've got enormous challenges facing this nation. But I thought, wow, here's somebody from the left, somebody I don't agree with on many issues politically, coming together with President Trump and focusing on an area of agreement, something that the American people desperately want.
There's no issue that should unite us more than this chronic health epidemic. There's no such thing as Republican children or Democratic children. These are our kids. 66% of them are damaged.
Kennedy is scheduled for one more Senate nomination hearing with a vote to happen sometime after that. Reporting on Capitol Hill, Jason Blair, NTD News.
And with the Senate Finance Committee holding RFK Jr.'s first confirmation hearing today, Senate Democrats grilled him on his stance on abortion, vaccines, and his loyalty to President Trump. Joining me to discuss some of those questions is naturopathic doctor Gina Nick. Dr. Gina Nick, thank you very much for joining us here today.
I'm very happy to be here, Jack. Thanks for having me.
Dr. Nick, RFK Jr.'s confirmation hearing before the Senate today was fairly hostile, and many of the questions from Democrats focused on his stance on abortion, vaccines, and his loyalty to President Trump. How do you think he answered those questions?
You know, I think he did a great job, and it really speaks to President Trump, in terms of his decision to recommend RFK Jr., because it was very clear his interest was not in having a divisive attitude. He wants to collaborate. He wants to work with Democrats, Republicans. His primary interest, and it came through loud and clear, is on the health and well-being of our children, our elderly, making sure the quality of our food improves, and making sure our environment is healthy for all of us. Essentially, that's what it's about, and that's what is most important. And that's what's going to help our country to thrive and, become an economic powerhouse again.
Kennedy cited processed foods and chemicals as a major contributor to chronic illnesses like autoimmune diseases and obesity. Was this an area that he had bipartisan support in today's hearing, did you see?
I did. I didn't see them focusing a lot on it. And so my sense is, yes, there was bipartisan support in that area. And so, the focus was more on a few topics that, in the grand scheme of things, aren't going to impact our country and the health and well-being and welfare of our country as much as looking at causes of chronic disease, the quality of our food, the quality of our soil, the quality of the air we're breathing, the water we're drinking. And so really his approach was and is a very common sense approach. And even when I practice medicine, I'm often saying it's just common sense. Putting responsibility back on the people to be aware of and take care of their own health as best as they can, and then utilizing the healthcare system when needed. Mm-hmm. But he talked about, the idea of self-responsibility too. And as a government, the job would be to educate the people on, hey, you can eat these foods, these ultra-processed foods, but here's some of the data on what that does to most bodies long-term or immediately. And then make a decision for yourself. And then be held accountable to those choices. And, that starts with teaching our kids. You and I were talking about the education system and the importance of getting back to teaching kids in schools about proper nutrition, about how nutrition really impacts how they think, how they feel, and how they just experience life day to day, and their level of success in the world.
We're seeing a growing epidemic of childhood chronic illnesses. What can the U.S. government do to effectively tackle this and still balance economic interests in the food industry?
Right. So again, it goes back to transparency and education. And I thought RFK Jr. did a great job in terms of speaking to the importance of transparency when it comes to the decisions we're making about the food that we're providing and marketing to kids. And seeing what is the data and what do we need to do more research looking at the direct correlation between diet and chronic health conditions in our kids. The fact that 1 in every 6 children now is diagnosed with a developmental disability, we have an issue. And how much of that can be impacted by slowly, in a balanced, healthy way, impacting the quality of food that this generation and future generations have access to.
Kennedy acknowledged that the importance of Medicaid, but he also criticized the program's effectiveness. What specific reforms could he propose to improve it?
This whole concept of food as medicine, it seems so simple, food as medicine. But really taking some of those dollars and focusing them on properly training doctors, on implementing diets and how to teach patients about changing their diet in a way that will effectively help with their chronic health conditions and will cost our country a heck of a lot less money. Mm-hmm. And so, changing a diet is a far more efficient way of helping with the prevention and treatment of chronic illness than, adding prescription medication upon prescription medication. And again, and it's not black or white. And RFK Jr. isn't acting or saying that it's black or white, but he does talk about the importance of understanding how food plays a critical role in the treatment and the prevention of chronic health challenges, and how can that be implemented into the Medicaid system to help save our country potentially $1 trillion.
Dr. Gina Nick, thank you very much for your insight here today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And now, former Senator Bob Menendez was sentenced today to 11 years in prison. The 71-year-old Democrat was convicted for taking hundreds of thousands of dollars in bribes, gold bars, and a Mercedes-Benz, all in exchange for favors from the Egyptian government and businessmen in New Jersey. This makes him the first U.S. senator charged and convicted of acting as an agent of a foreign government. Menendez was a longtime Democrat senator representing New Jersey for over 18 years. He was found guilty back in July and resigned from the Senate in August. Prosecutors were asking to sentence him for at least 15 years, while the defense was calling for around 2.5. The trial for his wife, Nadine Menendez, is set for March, and she's pleaded not guilty. And the Trump administration is ending the protected status of over 500,000 Venezuelans in the U.S. The details on that and the progress ICE has made on arrests since President Trump took office. That and more when we return.
Looking for a healthy and smooth-tasting brew? Drop by Days Coffee Roasters today and explore our wide selection of specialty-grade, small-batch roasted coffee. Home to North America's first enzyme-fermented coffee, we source a wide selection of specialty-grade coffee beans from around the world, and our baristas are ready to craft your customized brew. Visit Days Coffee at 28 North Street, Middletown, New York. Come experience a brew like no other.
Emeril Lagasse here, and I'm so excited to tell you about my French door air fryer 360. Extra large 26-quart capacity. Cook with up to 70% less calories from fat than deep frying. That's a big deal, my friend. 360 degrees of superheated air gives you fast, even cooking. My 10-in-1 French door air fryer 360s grills, air fries, dehydrates, roasts, bakes, broils, proofs, slow cooks, and toasts. This baby does it all. These French doors are a game changer. Look at how easy that is.
Now find out how you can try Emeril Lagasse's French Door Air Fryer 360 with 3 cooking tiers, fetch tool, air frying rack, and drip tray in your home for 30 days for just $14.99.
Order now and you'll also get Emeril's Air Fryer Favorites recipe book.
And we'll automatically upgrade you to our bonus cooking kit free. Plus, find out how you can get free shipping.
This offer will not last, so call or click now to order.
You're gonna love it, I guarantee it.
Focus on beauty, showcase nature, share kindness, feel brightness. 2025, the 5th NTD International Photography Competition. Capture the beautiful moments in your eyes. Your works will be showcased in galleries and on multiple online platforms, appreciated and collected. Please visit photo.ntdtv.com.
I don't know why you're so sad. You've got a roof over your head.
You gotta stop with that depressing stuff. That's what white people think.
You all right? It just feels like it's coming from everywhere.
Do you want to talk about it?
You can talk to me if you're feeling sad.
Whenever you need to talk, I'm here, okay?
When they learn something new and you can just see in their faces, it's such an incredible moment. It's those moments that are my favorite.
Welcome back. I'm Jack Bradley. A Federal Reserve today, they just hit a pause on interest rate cuts, and this is the agency's first key decision in President Trump's second term.
Today, the Federal Open Market Committee decided to leave our policy interest rate unchanged and to continue to reduce our securities holdings. I'll have more to say about monetary policy after briefly reviewing economic developments. Recent indicators suggest that economic activity has continued to expand at a solid pace. For 2024 as a whole, GDP looks to have risen above 2%, bolstered by resilient consumer spending. Investment in equipment and intangibles appears to have slowed in the fourth quarter, but was strong for the year overall.
Central bank officials opted to keep borrowing costs in a range of between 4.25 and 4.5%. Now, they're awaiting further progress on inflation, which remains above the 2% target. U.S. stocks dipped following the Fed's announcement. And several of President Trump's cabinet picks face contentious Senate confirmation hearings today. They include nominations for Small Business Administration, former Georgia Senator Kelly Loeffler, and Secretary of Commerce nominee billionaire Howard Lutnick. Loeffler's experience in cryptocurrency and as a co-owner of the WNBA team, but not in small business. And Lutnick pushed back on the Democrats questioning his personal wealth and financial interests. Joining me now to discuss is Alex Frei, the Senior Research Associate at the Heritage Foundation Center for Data Analysis. Alex, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Now, I want to start with Scott Bessent and how he was just confirmed by the Senate. And what do you think are his policies? How is he going to carry out Trump's America First policies?
Yes, so as you said, Scott Bessent is a strong supporter of America First policies from the Trump administration. He believes in lowering taxes. So one of his main things he wants to achieve as Secretary of the Treasury is to extend the TCJA, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, that was implemented during the first Trump administration, and he voiced his support for, cutting taxes for the middle class and avoiding having that run out at the end of the year.
Interesting. And what sort of policy proposals do you see the Treasury Department carrying out under him different from the Biden administration?
So one of the things that I personally really enjoyed is him saying he wants to increase daily oil production by 3 million barrels a day. So currently we're at 13 million barrels a day, but he wants to actually increase that by 3 million barrels, which will actually increase American energy, not only make us energy independent, but dominant, and that will actually decrease prices overall, because when we unleash American energy, everything else will benefit from it.
Drill, baby, drill, as Trump likes to say there.
Yes, sir.
And now we have Howard Lutnick, as he's undergoing in the confirmation hearings for Commerce Secretary. He's voiced support for tariffs, broad countrywide tariffs at different countries, highest on China, of course. What is your take on him?
So I think he's a great pick for the Commerce Secretary. First of all, his story is nothing but inspiring. Having lost his parents when he was only 18, only to lose his brother and 650 employees in the 9/11 attacks, come back and build his business out, that shows me he's a man of character and he has an incredible story through all his hardships. So back to his policies, he believes in common sense tariffs. He believes that tariffs can be a tool to further our national security interests. We saw this week with the Colombian president. After only 20 minutes, he already offered to fly a private presidential plane with the threat of tariffs. So Lutnick will actually support these common sense tariffs rather than just overall tariffs that may not be in the nation's best interest.
We've heard Trump say that tariff is his fourth favorite word below God, religion, love. So he's definitely looking to use tariffs a lot, especially targeted tariffs at Canada, Mexico, especially China. Now, a big concern among economists is that the tariffs will go back onto the consumer, but Trump says that not so much. What's his side there?
So, yeah, I think it's quite humorous when people think tariffs may raise inflation, because during the first Trump administration, when you look at inflation was actually around 1.9, below that, right on that 2% target for all 4 years. And he had some tariffs against China, and they were targeted. Inflation happens through wasteful government spending on the aggregate. So I don't believe that these tariffs will cause overall inflation, especially if they're targeted. I believe he once even said he wants to have these tariffs targeted at goods that we don't produce here rather than goods that we don't produce. So yeah, I think he's going to do a great job with facilitating these common sense tariffs.
And how can the U.S. balance protecting the lead in technology through tariffs without escalating global tensions?
Yeah, so it seems like so much happened this week, just this week with AI, the DeepSeek of China, protecting our technology here and not exporting our technology to our adversaries such as China is going to be very important. So safekeeping that industry in particular, bringing these jobs back home, which he actually expressed he wants to support the American worker, that's going to be of most importance.
It's very uncommon for a nominee under a president to not be confirmed by the Senate. very uncommon. Very close we saw with Hegseth. And what's your take on how his nominees are going to do?
So luckily for Scott Bessent, he actually had a large level of bipartisan support, even though he really aligns with the Trump economic agenda, which I love to see that level of bipartisanship. I think Lutnick will perhaps have the same amount of bipartisan support, maybe not as much, but I think, 18, maybe a little less, but I don't think it's going to be as kind of cutthroat or tight as the other more politically charged nominees that he had.
Mm-hmm. And then finally, how can Lutnick ensure effective implementation of Trump's policies that promote U.S. manufacturing without raising prices?
Yeah, so like I said, I think you got to look at the goods which we are going to slap the tariff on. So if it's something we don't produce here, like let's say bananas, then it probably will raise the prices of bananas. But you got to be strategic with those tariffs and look where it won't hurt the consumer as much. I like the example of the 1980s when we actually had an export control, so with Japanese vehicles, where we limited the export. And what happened? They brought the manufacturing jobs to the USA, benefiting the American worker. When we go back to that time, they probably had the same exact concerns of prices being raised, but what ended up happening is we had more jobs here. So I believe we're going to follow that common sense approach and bring jobs back without hurting the American consumer and lowering prices, exactly like what I said, through unleashing American energy.
Alexander Frei, thank you very much for your insight here today.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. And now the Trump administration is ending the protected status of over 500,000 Venezuelans in the U.S. This comes as ICE reports that it has already arrested over 5,000 illegal immigrants since President Trump took office. NTD's Arian Pazdar has an immigration update.
Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem says her predecessor enacted extended protection for Venezuelans in the U.S. before he left office. The Trump administration is now getting rid of it through an executive order on Wednesday. Here's Noem talking about the issue on Fox News.
We were not going to follow through on what he did to tie our hands, that we are going to follow the process, evaluate all of these individuals that are in our country, including the Venezuelans that are here.
The extended protection had given Venezuelans an additional 18 months of deportation relief and access to work permits. Noem says the U.S. is now in talks to send the individuals back to Venezuela. A day prior, on Tuesday, Venezuela's socialist president, Nicolas Maduro, said this about possible returns.
We want them to return so they can be happy here, so they can come to create businesses, work, and build in their land.
Noem added that the State Department is speaking with other countries about taking their citizens back as well. This comes as planes continue landing in Colombia this week, bringing back deported immigrants. Colombia's president on Wednesday saying the U.S. shouldn't treat all immigrants as criminals, only those who committed crimes.
One man said all Jews were criminals, and he killed 6 million of them. Were they criminals? Were they? Or was it a Nazi error?
On Tuesday, the new White House press secretary commented on that same issue about only deporting immigrants who committed crimes.
And if you are an individual, a foreign national, who illegally enters the United States of America, you are, by definition, a criminal.
Meanwhile, in the U.S., new video published on Wednesday shows ICE raiding a building in Chicago. They reportedly detained immigrants suspected of having ties to the Venezuelan gang Trendy Aragua. This comes as ICE gives an update on the arrests of illegal immigrants since President Trump took office. The agency says that, as of Wednesday, it made over 5,500 arrests and lodged over 4,300 detainers. ICE agents are conducting raids and arrests across the country. Locations often targeted are major cities like New York and Chicago. Arian Pazdar, NTD News.
And coming up, as Trump's executive orders are reshaping the country, what noticeable changes are we seeing in the military? We break down the Pentagon's new priorities with a panel of experts. Trump Media expands into financial services. It says this is to protect from cancellation and censorship. More on that when we return.
According to ancient Chinese medicine, purslane is considered a medicinal herb and is used to help lower cholesterol, improve vascular functions, and prevent diabetes. perilla seeds can nourish the lungs and spleen. It is used to treat asthma and improve pulmonary functions. Puritang green vegetable omega-3 is made from purslane and perilla seeds from Hwangmae Mountain in South Korea. It contains over 90% of omega-3, 6, 7, and 9, the highest concentration possible without chemical additives. The soft gel is made of natural seaweed. It is 100% organic and vegan. Both adults and children can take it with peace of mind. Ancient recipes were passed down from heaven to bring prosperity and longevity. Puritang green vegetable omega-3.
And we are fed up. Fed up that hunger devours dreams. Fed up that hunger destroys joy. Fed up with the fact that hunger eats childhood. Help us feed the futures of children all over the world by visiting givetosave.org. For as little as $10 a month, you can join Save the Children as we support children and families in desperate need of our help. Now is the time to get fed up and give back. When you join the cause, your $10 monthly donation can help communities in need of life-saving treatments and nutrients, prevent children from dropping out of school, support our work with communities and governments to help children go from short-term surviving to long-term thriving. And now, thanks to special government grants, every dollar you give can multiply up to 10 times the impact. That means more food, water, medicine, and help for kids around the world. You'll also receive a free tote bag to share your support for children in need. Having your childhood eaten away by hunger is unimaginable. Get fed up. Call us now or visit givetosave.org today.
Welcome back. I'm Jack Bradley. Changes are underway at the Pentagon as Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth carries out President Trump's executive orders. To dive into this, we're joined by Mark Cancian, Senior Advisor at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, and Garrett Exner, Adjunct Fellow at the Hudson Institute. Mark Cancian, Garrett Exner, thank you both very much for joining us here today.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for having us on the show.
Now, Trump announced orders this week to limit transgenders in the military, end DEI practices, and reinstate troops that were discharged for refusing the COVID vaccine. The Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth swore that he'd carry this out swiftly. Mark, are we likely to see any major changes in the military with these policies?
I don't think so. First of all, you haven't heard a whole lot of pushback on them, unlike some of the other EOs like birthright citizenship, where there's been huge pushback. First, the number of transgenders is very small, and this has a lot of political, social visibility, but in terms of the military, it's a very small group. And DEI has been very unpopular, and the fact that it's going away, and the fact that he has advocated excellence, warrior traits, competence, transparencies, those are all very good things. So if he sticks to that, I think he'll be on very solid ground.
Garrett, do you have anything to add there?
No, I think that's exactly right. I don't see this being wildly unpopular in the military. I think getting rid of DEI is very popular. I think the transgender issue is vastly overblown, and it probably won't cause any change in the overall makeup of the military.
Mm-hmm. Now, in his first statement released as Secretary of Defense, Hegseth outlined his priorities. The only country he mentioned by name was China, specifically deterring the Chinese Communist Party's aggression in the Indo-Pacific. Now, U.S. military officials under Biden have for months been saying that the threat of China is increasing. Garrett, just lay out for us, why has the CCP become such a major concern?
I think number one, it's the rhetoric of the CCP leaders who are telling us every day what they're going to do. They want to replace the U.S.-led, the Western-led world order with their own. And I'd say the second thing is their actions, right? They are getting more and more aggressive in their attempts to say they're going to move towards quote-unquote reunification with Taiwan, an island and a nation that they've never owned and never controlled, yet they're going to reunify with it. And I think that would clearly upset a lot of things in the world: trade, flow of goods. The way that we have come to know in the world, the economy of the world has grown for the last 200 years. All of that is destabilized and thrown out the door if China supplants the United States.
And Mark, you've run a simulation on what would happen if China invades Taiwan. Can you just give us one or two major takeaways from that?
Sure. We ran a series of war games on a U.S.-China conflict over Taiwan. We did it 25 times. The bottom line was that the United States and its allies could maintain a democratic, autonomous Taiwan, but it came at very high price. We lost 2 aircraft carriers and about a dozen ships in the first 3 weeks, several hundred aircraft, several thousand troops. And this was only in about 3 weeks. In other words, we took about half as many casualties as we did in 20 years of war in 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm. Now, moving on to some other executive orders here, President Trump sent the military to the southern border. Mark, what is their role and how effective will they be in securing the southern border?
Well, there are 2 big questions here. One is what has been directed so far, and that is within the practice of the last 15 years. That is, the United States is sending troops to the border, mostly support troops, in fact, entirely support troops, to help the Border Patrol do its job more effectively. So you get a lot of engineers, you get transportation, not people who are going to deal with illegal migrants. The wild card is that Trump has signed an EO directing the Department of Defense and the military to take over border security and to seal the border. And NORTHCOM has 30 days to come back with a plan to do that. Now, if that's taken literally, seal the border with military forces, you're talking about 100,000, 200,000 troops. That would be an enormous break with past practice.
And Garrett, how do you see the Trump administration addressing the problem at the southern border, particularly utilizing the military to do so?
I think it's absolutely necessary. I think over the last 4 years, the situation at the border has really been unconscionable and out of control. So I'm happy to see that resources are being poured in to get this under control. We have to stop the flow of fentanyl into this country. We have to stop the flow of illegal migrants into this country, particularly ones that pose a threat to American society, American communities. We're not talking about just, migrant workers who are coming up from South America. We're talking about a large number of Chinese nationals coming in. We're talking about a large number of people from Middle Eastern and Arab countries coming in that are undocumented. We don't know who they are. And there's a lot of nefarious things that they could get up to once they get into the United States under a false identity. So it needs to be shut down. This is a national security issue. The military is the right entity to turn to and say, hey, secure this border, help out DHS. And once we get it set, then we can kind of get to a steady state operation from there.
And Trump also signed an executive order this week to create an Iron Dome-like missile defense system like they have in Israel. But we aren't fired upon every day like Israel has been for years, even before the October 7th Hamas terrorist attack. Garrett, how necessary is it to have an Iron Dome for America?
I think if you just look at the last 2 to 3 years with drones, with balloons, with things coming into our airspace that we do not want there, we are in desperate need of an update to our air defense system. Does that look exactly like what Israel has? No, but the reason we're calling it an Iron Dome for the United States is that Iron Dome and what Israel has done is the standard. That is the corporate standard for what we want to achieve. And ours might look different. It might be more space-based. In fact, I think a lot of it will be space-based. And it doesn't need to cover the entirety of the nation. We're obviously a lot larger than Israel, so that might not be possible. But you could spread the sensors across the nation at a fairly low cost, and then have strategic locations for where we would have the response systems at. So this is a good update. It's a welcome update. I want to see it get done. It may take some time to get it right, but yes, we should have a new Iron Dome for America.
And Mark, what are your thoughts on the necessity of an Iron Dome?
Well, as Garrett said, the Iron Dome is a metaphor for a stronger, air and missile defense system. Iron Dome in Israel is actually a short-range system for very specific circumstances. But there's been a lot of interest in expanding U.S. Air and missile defenses. We have some defenses based in Alaska, but they're very thin. I think there's a lot of interest in expanding those, maybe in space, maybe ground-based against missiles, ballistic missiles coming in from other countries, North Korea, for example. But there's also interest in defense against cruise missiles and aircraft. The United States got out of that business really during the Cold War, now looking to get back in, as many countries have cruise missiles that might be fired at the United States. That's an entirely new kind of capability that we haven't really had in any extent for a long time.
With that, Mark Gansian and Garrett Exner, thank you very much for your time here today.
Thanks for having us.
Trump Media is entering financial services. It says the move is to protect American patriots from cancellation and censorship. Here's the story.
Trump Media is expanding into financial services, partnering with Charles Schwab. CEO Devin Nunes says Trump.fi will offer investment products and decentralized finance for American patriots.
It's an idea that a lot of people are excited about because financial services is going to be disrupted, just like every industry that software has disrupted. But this is supercharged software, which is the Bitcoin or blockchain technology.
Financial expert Vijay Murolia says this is a smart move because he believes blockchain tech will grow faster in the coming years. Truth.fi says cryptocurrency investments will be among its offerings. Nunez says this is part of creating an ecosystem where, quote, American patriots can protect themselves from the ever-present threat of cancellation, censorship, and debanking.
Debanking is for real. Debanking is serious. It's anti-American to debank somebody for the way that they feel, especially if it's a feeling about a political situation.
President Trump is the majority owner of Trump Media, which owns social media platform Truth Social. NTD reached out to Trump Media but didn't hear back before airtime. Nunez says Trump.fi is expected to launch sometime in 2025.
Coming up, we'll speak with John Torres, former acting director for ICE, about border czar Tom Homan's daily deportations. What are the biggest challenges for the agency as they carry out President Trump's orders?
Hi, I'm Susan Lucci. You may know me from my many years on television. I never thought about heart disease until I had my own heart event. I felt this slight pressure on my chest, just slight. I thought, oh, it's nothing, it'll go away. I didn't get it. I did not get it. But a few days later, while shopping at a boutique, that pressure returned, much stronger. It felt like an elephant pressing on my chest. I had a 90% blockage in my main artery and a 75% blockage in the adjacent artery. I was rushed into surgery where I received 2 stents in my arteries. Stents developed through research funded by the American Heart Association. Those stents saved my life. That's why I'm in front of you today, asking you to join me in supporting the American Heart Association by becoming a monthly donor. Call now or go to helpheart.org. For only $19 a month, just 63 cents a day, you can help fund the next medical breakthrough. Get the next person trained in CPR, the next hospital certified in high-quality cardiovascular care. I'm so grateful to the American Heart Association. Their research helped save my life. I can enjoy life with my children, my grandchildren, and my friends. Heart disease is America's #1 killer, and your support now can help save your life or the life of someone you love. Give $19 a month with your credit card, and we'll send you this special t-shirt that you can wear to show that you are helping save lives. Please, listen to your heart. The only reason I'm here today is because I did. So please call the number on your screen or go to helpheart.org now. Join me as a monthly donor today and help save even more lives. Thank you.
Amazing
They're just young people, hungry, homeless, and vulnerable. Covenant House is helping young adults facing homelessness. We're providing safe shelter to thousands, but the need is overwhelming. Please call or go online now. With your gift of $19 a month, we'll send you this blanket as a reminder of the comfort your gift provides a young person tonight. You'll provide safe shelter, hot meals, and medical care. Call the number on your screen or go online to safeplacetosleep.org.
Welcome back. I'm Jack Bradley. To dive into how ICE agents work, I spoke with John Torres, former acting director for ICE. He's also the president of Security and Technology Consulting for Guidepost Solutions. John Torres, thank you very much for joining us here today.
Pleasure to be here, Jack.
Now, under President Trump's administration, ICE can now arrest illegal immigrants they find during operations, even if they weren't the primary target. How does this freedom for ICE make a collateral arrests change its operations?
Well, ICE is still going to remain focused, at least immediately in the near future, on arresting the worst of the worst. So you're looking at violent felons, aggravated felons, those that are imminent public safety threats and national security threats. But in this sense, where in the past administrations have limited those priorities and said if you see someone that's not your target, even though they're in the United States illegally without any type of documentation, then they ask those agents to exercise the discretion and not take them into custody. Today, though, President Trump has removed those limitations. And so, as we've heard the border czar say over and over again, if we're looking for a person that is a serious criminal and we go to their house or wherever they may be residing, and there are two or three other people there that are out of status, ICE can take them all into custody. And that's the point that they're trying to make. If you're not going to let ICE into the jails to do a peaceful transfer of custody from a county jail or a state prison into ICE custody, then ICE has to go into the community and look for them.
Now, Trump lifted the restrictions on ICE operating in schools and hospitals as well. Is this a different policy than arresting Americans who are criminals?
Can an ICE agent just walk into a school or a hospital? And it varies over past administrations. I know I've seen it fluctuate during my time in the agency. And what I mean by that is, sure, there are times where we could have made those arrests, but it required many levels of review and in some instances all the way up to the director of ICE. What they're saying today is you don't need those levels of review, but I can assure you that the agents are still going to look at it very carefully. It's not as if they're going to go roaming the hallways of a hospital or school or church just looking for people that are out of status. And so how does it differ from arresting a U.S. citizen? It's very similar. If you have someone who is an imminent public safety threat or a national security threat, or, for example, you have someone who is a sexual predator, a pedophile, and they're trying to take refuge in a school or a church, well, the reality is you want to protect the children in that school or in that church, and the priority of protecting the person because of their illegal status over protecting a child in a school that may be the subject of or victimized by that sexual predator, I think is a bad public safety policy in the first place. And so what you're seeing today is the ability for an ICE agent to make that arrest if it rises to that level.
And a quick follow-up on that, are illegal immigrants using those locations to hide from ICE?
Yes, they have in the past, more so in churches. And quite frankly, we've seen some, even during my day, when I was in the agency, where people took refuge in a church and we knew about it and they stayed there for a year or two. And then eventually people would come to us and say, come to the agency and say, this person is stuck in a limbo status. They can't leave. They're afraid if they leave, you're going to arrest them. But if the reality is they place themselves in that church to take refuge. And now they're saying, well, we shouldn't arrest them at all. And so we knew they were there. They were not an imminent public safety threat, so we didn't go in and arrest them. But what we're saying today, if they are a serious public safety threat, ICE agents will go into that church and they'll coordinate it to the best that they can.
Now, ICE is working to build relationships with local leaders in Maryland to improve enforcement. How could ICE's efforts to collaborate with local officials affect immigration enforcement, particularly in sanctuary cities?
So I've seen that in the past too, in my days where I led special agents in Chicago, for example. Chicago has always been a variation of some type of sanctuary city, whether it's partial or fully. And during my time in the past, we negotiated with the police department and with public officials of Chicago and came to an agreement that if you were talking about serious felons, aggravated felons, violent felons, the city was willing to work with us on that. And I remember, there was long negotiations to get to that point, but there is common ground when you're talking about protecting the citizens of the community or of the city of those sanctuary cities. And so it's very possible that you'll see some middle ground as you will see city officials at some point start to sit down with the administration or with the border czar or with the Secretary of Homeland Security to find a middle ground there.
How exactly do sanctuary cities make ICE's job more difficult?
They make it more difficult because ICE will require more resources to go find a person. Correct. People have asked me, can ICE arrest a city official? Well, it is against federal law to harbor or shield or obstruct an ICE agent's job to protect a person here who is illegally in the United States. We have not, it's been rare that you've arrested city officials for doing something like that. Transporting a person who is out of status is also a crime. But in the end, what we're looking at is, let's say you could go arrest someone who is sitting in a jail, and that is a confined setting. It's a somewhat safe space. They're not armed, and you could just basically hand someone over to ICE if there's an ICE warrant or an ICE detainer. Now, granted, a detainer is just a request to have someone transferred from one jurisdiction to another, and it doesn't have to be honored. There's no federal requirement that says you have to hand that person over. So in a sanctuary city, they don't hand that person over and they don't share information. I've worked in cities where law enforcement jurisdictions will share information, especially on felons and violent felons. And so, or recidivists, those that commit crimes repeatedly. And so when they talk about trying to protect the community from criminals that are continually breaking the law and committing serious felonies against the citizens of that community, then yes, it's easier to have those people just handed over to ICE. You can do it in a setting where they may hand over 5 or 6 at a time, and you can send a van over and pick them up and transfer them into ICE custody. When you're talking about a sanctuary city and they don't cooperate, ICE will have to use additional taxpayer resources to do the record searches, to do the police indices searches. They'll have to do locates, and then they'll have to send a team out to go knock on a door and arrest that person. And quite frankly, it's a lot more dangerous because you don't know what's waiting for you behind that door.
Border czar Tom Homan has let journalists and public figures accompany raids. How does this sort of transparency play into President Trump's border policy?
Well, I think it's important for a couple of reasons. And the most important reason is that there are a lot of rumors and false innuendos and accusations that are out there on a regular basis. I've seen them throughout my whole career. I've seen crazy stories like the one you saw last week from the city of Chicago, where they said ICE agents were raiding a school and terrorizing the children and had them living in fear and hiding in their classrooms. When the reality was a couple of Secret Service agents who were doing background information, doing an investigation to support the protectee, identified themselves as Secret Service agents, yet city officials still went out on social media and made the accusations that it was an ICE agent or a team of agents terrorizing the school. And what Tom Homan and his team are doing right now is trying to create transparency so they can show the American people how this works, and that they are right now, especially right now, targeting the worst of the worst and going after the criminals. And you're actually getting a countdown on a daily basis of how many they're arresting and what many of their backgrounds are.
John Torres, President of Security and Technology Consulting for Guidepost Solutions and former Acting Director for ICE. Thank you very much for your insight here today.
Glad to be here, Jack. Thanks.
Podcasters and social media content creators could join the White House briefing room soon. Are Americans on board with the change? NTD's Sam Wong was out on the National Mall to hear from them.
So the White House is now saying that they're going to have alternative media platforms like podcasters and social media influencers in the press room now. So do you think it's a good thing?
I think it's a solid thing, giving, I guess, more of the common people a more available voice.
For sure. I think the more transparent the government is, the better.
The more information, the better. The more sharing, the better. You know, freedom of speech and spreading the word is what it's all about.
I would be curious to know if it's going to be balanced, and I don't think it'll be balanced.
I think it's a good thing. I also hope it's not biased to a specific range of thought.
I think it is a good thing because a lot of social media influencers, all different political standpoints, I feel like an issue with most news channels, they're very biased.
I'm curious to see how they're vetting and determining who gets in and who doesn't, because, you know, we know that historically Donald Trump has at his will just kicked out journalists that he doesn't like.
Who would you like to see in there? Anybody that comes to mind?
I mean, not really. I think that probably the best podcasters in the world are ones I've never heard of.
Myself.
That would be cool.
You know, why not?
Only thinking about podcasters, I can think of like Joe Rogan maybe.
Yeah, Lex Friedman. I'd like to see Lex in there. I mean, Rogan would be cool, but I have a lot of respect for Lex. Actually used to train jiu-jitsu with Lex.
I know Aaron Parnas has applied to be able to go into the White House. He's an independent journalist, but who knows if he'll be allowed.
Honestly, I want to say just like with actors, I want to see more C-list, more D-list type people come into the scene. I don't want to see the main faces. I think I would want to see new voices.
So how do you think this is going to shake up the media landscape and journalism as a whole?
I think the more information that people can get from the most sources possible is better for everybody.
It's going to modernize it, hopefully in a good way. Hopefully, you know, it's been too long until they started catching up, but fingers crossed it works out.
I think it's going to change because then we can have firsthand news from the people that we already trust. We can let whoever we want in, but I don't know what use it is if the White House, if the press secretary isn't going to be honest.
I hope some way in a positive point, but, you know, a lot of stuff has been happening recently, you know, with Donald Trump getting in office, so I can't really predict, you know, what's going to happen.
People are clearly digging deeper and looking for alternative ways to access their news coverage, and to have them now, you know, in the White House, like on the front lines, I think is fantastic. Yeah.
That's all we have for you tonight on Capitol Report. Have a nice evening. We'll see you right back here tomorrow.
Right now at Mathis Home, buy one Lazy Boy recliner, get the second one free. That's right, buy one recliner, get the matching recliner absolutely free. Recliner pairs start at just $7.99. It's your chance to save on the handcrafted quality and comfort that Lazy Boy is famous for. And get 2 great chairs for one low price. They're all in stock now with easy financing and fast free delivery. Buy one, get one free on Lazy Boy recliners, only at Mathis Home.
Kids love it. Parents trust it.
Obviously.
Explore GJW Plus Kids Series and Ganjion Campus courses led by expert educators.
This is spectacular.
Children will learn values like respect, responsibility, and knowledge in language, science, and more.
Wow.
All while having fun.
Perfect.
Subscribe today at GJW Plus Kids, where learning meets fun.
Hi friends, Richard Karn here. Now I'm known as the guy who can fix just about anything, but the technology in most appliances requires very special training to fix. My point is, even I know when I've met my match, and that's why my family has Choice Home Warranty. So we won't get stuck with high-priced repairs.
Choice Home Warranty covers over 25 major home systems and appliances. That's your AC, heating, plumbing, kitchen and laundry appliances, and so much more.
Imagine for less than a cup of coffee a day, Choice Home Warranty can help